In the late summer of 1977, life inside a modest council house at 284 Green Street was ordinary. Peggy Hodgson, a single mother, was raising her 4 children, Margaret, Janet, Johnny, and Billy. The house looked like every other brick home on the street. Narrow staircase, small bedrooms, a cramped living room with worn furniture. Nothing about it suggested that it would soon become the center of one of the most debated paranormal cases in British history. Then, on the night of August 30th, everything changed. It started with knocking sounds. Soft at first, then deliberate. Peggy thought one of the boys was playing tricks. But when she checked, they were all in bed. The knocking continued, coming from the walls, then from inside the bedroom shared by Janet and Margaret. 11-year-old Janet said her wardrobe had moved. Peggy dismissed it, until she saw it herself. A heavy chest of drawers appeared to slide several inches across the floor without anyone touching it. When she tried to push it back, it resisted, as if something unseen was pushing against her. Terrified, she called the police. A female officer arrived and later signed an official statement claiming she witnessed the chair move across the floor on its own. It was not a dramatic leap or crash, just a steady slide. But it was enough to convince her that something was wrong. Word spread quickly. Journalists began arriving. Reporters from the Daily Mirror took interest and contacted members of the Society for Psychical Research. 2 investigators, Maurice Grosse and Guy Lyon Playfair, stepped into the home determined to document everything. They brought tape recorders, cameras, notebooks, and long nights of observation. The disturbances escalated. Knocks became violent bangs. Furniture tipped over. Toys were thrown across rooms. Neighbors reported hearing screams after midnight. Activity seemed to center around Janet. She began speaking in a deep, guttural voice that sounded nothing like a child. Recordings captured the voice claiming to be an elderly man who once lived in the house. The voice said he had died in a chair downstairs. Later, it was discovered that a previous resident had indeed passed away in the home, though skeptics argue this detail may have been exaggerated over time. What disturbed investigators most was the duration. This was not a single chaotic night. The events continued for months. Janet was allegedly levitated more than once. Photographs were published showing her suspended above her bed. Critics claimed the photos captured her jumping. Supporters insisted witnesses saw her lifted without effort or preparation. Media coverage intensified public fascination. Reporters camped outside. Crowds gathered at night hoping to witness something unusual. Some neighbors claimed stones were thrown at windows without anyone visible outside. Others described seeing curtains twitch when rooms were empty. Inside the house, life became exhausting. Peggy still had to cook meals, wash clothes, and send her children to school. But every creak of the staircase felt threatening. Sleep became rare. Fear became part of the routine. Maurice Grosse grew personally convinced the family was not fabricating the entire case. Guy Lyon Playfair remained cautious, acknowledging that while fraud occurred in some instances, other events defied easy explanation. Together they recorded over 200 hours of audio. On tape, the rough male voice answered questions, argued with investigators, and even mocked them. Medical professionals examined Janet and found no physical condition explaining how she could sustain such a harsh, deep voice for long periods, yet skepticism never faded. On several occasions, Janet was caught bending spoons or attempting to stage minor phenomena. These admissions fueled critics who labeled the entire haunting a hoax driven by attention and stress. Others suggested the possibility of poltergeist activity linked to adolescent emotional turbulence, an unconscious release of psychokinetic energy. In 1978, American investigators Ed and Lorraine Warren briefly visited the home. They believed darker forces might be involved. However, their participation was limited compared to the British researchers who had spent extended time documenting events. The disturbances gradually weakened over nearly 2 years. There was no dramatic exorcism, no final confrontation. The house simply grew quieter. The Hodgson family continued living there long after the investigators left. Years later, Janet admitted that around 30% of the events had been faked out of frustration when nothing happened. She maintained that the remaining incidents were genuine. Guy Lyon Playfair stood by his belief that although trickery occurred, certain phenomena could not be fully explained. Today, the Enfield poltergeist remains one of the most thoroughly documented alleged hauntings in British history. Police statements, audio recordings, photographs, media archives, and first-hand accounts still exist. And yet, no universal conclusion has ever been reached. The house still stands on that quiet street in Enfield. Cars pass. Children walk by. Most people have no idea what once unfolded behind those walls. Whether it was a mixture of stress, mischief, media amplification, or something beyond explanation, one fact remains: experienced investigators left that house unsettled. Not because everything was proven supernatural, but because not everything could be explained.